We have a beautiful practice here in Plum Village, which is listening to the rain meditation. At any moment, if you feel your thinking has taken you away, you can always come back to the sound of the rain and enjoy being warm and cozy together here in the meditation hall. So we're very fortunate today. 4 monks and nuns have been kind enough to sit up here. It's much easier to sit down there. And they're open to sharing about from their heart, about their practice and how that has helped them to transform suffering and bring happiness and joy into their lives. And so it's an opportunity for us to come up here and sit in this chair and also share a question that's coming from our heart. So it can be a question about the practice, a question about our suffering, difficulties in our lives. And a good question can help many people. It may seem like the question is just to do with our own life, but when we ask it, we find that many people also are struggling or stuck in that same place. And a good question doesn't have to be long. So we can share succinctly what is really at the core of our suffering. And by asking the question, we already bring about a lot of healing, because sometimes we haven't been able to put into words that suffering we experience in our heart, but we feel something, and then coming up here and borrowing from the collective energy of the Sangha, we're able to ask the question, and healing and transformation can take place. If you feel a little bit shy to come up here, you can also write your question down on a piece of paper and pass it forward. And one of our, maybe towards the bell, and one of our sisters will bring it up to us, and we may answer a few questions that are written down. So if you have a question, you're welcome to come up here. You can bring a cushion and sit up here. And we'll take one question at a time. And you don't have to hesitate. Usually it's a little bit tricky getting started, but by the end we have to say, no, sorry, we can't answer all the questions. So please don't be shy. Yeah, so please you can come up. The first question, you can sit here, and those who also have a question, you can bring up your cushion and sit behind. And so we'll start with the sound of the bell before we ask the question.
So I have a question about the more profound, subtle teachings of Buddhism. I'm reading Anger right now by Thich Nhat Hanh. I've really enjoyed Silence by Thich Nhat Hanh, but I'm aware that there are more subtle concepts out there, like non-duality, emptiness, and further teachings on interconnectedness. And to what extent do you think it's important for beginner learners and learners of Zen to aspire to understand these teachings and to study these teachings? And if so, how can they study them?
So I'll just restate the question, if that's okay. And please correct me if I missed something. So you have a question about the more subtle teachings of Buddhism. You've been reading the book Silence by our teacher, and you're aware also that there are teachings on interconnectedness, emptiness, non-duality, and so forth. And so how, as a beginner, can you, or should you, and how can you practice to get in touch with these deeper teachings?
Dear Thai, dear Sangha, this is playing football. I passed the ball to Sister Nghiem. I have heard about drinking tea and boiling water, which Sister Nghiem is practicing very well. It has to do with interconnectedness, emptiness, and so on. So the ball is to Sister Nghiem.
Dear Thai, dear Sangha, I will try and reply with my best British accent. So it's a bit worn down. I will offer a few points, and then I hope one of my elders can add. In my own practice, I don't separate the deep stuff from the daily stuff. When I am angry, I do my best to use the deep teachings to help me handle my anger. And I really love the teaching about when you're angry with someone, you visualize them in front of you, and then you close your eyes and you imagine both of you in 200 years' time. And then when you open your eyes again, you think, all I want to do is hug that person. I am so grateful they are alive on this planet at the same time as me. So there we're using the deep teaching on impermanence and the preciousness of life to help break through our anger. And the silence is also a kind of doorway to help us touch our deep connectedness with everything around us. When you eat your food, that's the best chance to touch interbeing and to realize that all the life energy, the warmth, and the miracle of our own body and our own life, they are possible because of interbeing and profound interconnectedness. If you put me in a space shuttle and ejected me into outer space, I couldn't survive very long. I don't know how many seconds it is, but not very long. So in the silence, we can touch the way in which our breath, our body, and our whole existence is supported by all of life around us. I'm waiting for him to finish taking notes. This may also be on YouTube, so you can watch it again. I think the mind can easily get fascinated by the deep teachings, and sometimes that can take us away from applying them in practice. But Buddhism in general, and our tradition in particular, we're very concrete. We don't have to wait for a lifetime of study. We don't need to wait for a lifetime of practicing breathing to touch the fruits of our breathing and our study. Already in 1 day of retreat, 5 days, 7 days, we can touch a lot of peace and healing, and that is real and that is deep. It is not a kind of superficial experience. We are touching the present moment and we're touching real peace. So although the teachings, as over time, they can go deeper and deeper, it's not that what we can touch already right now, today, in our own practice is not, there's nothing superficial about it. It contains, in fact, all the practices in Plum Village have evolved from the deepest teachings. So it's like we're going into the ocean together.
Dear Thai, dear brothers, sisters, and dear friends, we can only understand the deep teaching and subtle teaching of the Buddhism by our daily practice. Without daily practice, we cannot understand the deep teaching. I remember that when I just entered the monastery, Thai, our teacher, used to ask me to go out to play with the sisters. Because at that moment, I also really want to get deep in the teaching. I want to study, to do the research in order that I can understand the teaching more deeply. But they always ask me to go out to play with the sisters, and I'm so surprised. And day by day, I see that my sisters, they played with each other, but they let go very easy. They don't learn much, they don't study much by book, by the tape, by DVD, but they practice let go easily. They can be happy easily. They can be joyful easily. They can open their heart easily. And from that time, I came to the sisters to play with them and to observe my mind. And from that, I start to understand the Buddhism. They used to take the example of the flower to teach us about the non-self and the interbeing. Non-self is mean that everything there is no the separate self. It relates to each other. For example, the flower, they need the earth, the soil, the water, manure, sunshine, the rain, many non-flower elements in the flower. And thanks to non-flower element, that flower exists. So it is the same with ourselves. Thanks to non-self element, we exist. We exist here because of our parents, our grandparents, our ancestors, our society, our world, our food, farmer, shopper, cooker. Every particular small element exists for us to exist. And in our daily life, we contemplate in that light so that we can understand the interbeing. For example, when we are angry with someone, we know that without that person, we cannot exist. That person in ourselves, and we are in that person. And if we can contemplate like that, we don't have tendency to push that person away. Because our tendency is to put the people we don't like away. We don't want to do anything with that person. But because of the interbeing, we know that without that person, we cannot exist. So it is why we take care of our wound when we are angry with that person, and also take care of that person at the same time. And we feel we are related to each other with that person. And by that way, we don't exclude anyone. And we feel that we are embraced also with other people because we relate to each other. For example, when we are angry with our parents, we don't want to do anything with our parents. But if we look deeply, we see that without our parents we cannot exist, and our parents still in us. Without our parents, why we are here? And if we don't have anything to do with them, why we are angry with them? If we are angry with someone, it means that that person is still in you. And we have to take good care of the anger in ourselves. And by that way, we don't feel lonely. We feel lonely because we separate ourselves with other people. If we angry with someone, we don't want to do anything with them. And slowly, slowly, we cut off the relationship with other people. And so it is why we don't feel connected to other people. So by going back to ourselves, by contemplating the non-self and interbeing, we feel we are connected with other people. At the beginning, it's a little bit difficult, but slowly, slowly, by the daily practice, we can feel that. We can embrace our suffering when we are angry with someone, but that person is still in you, and you take care of the wound in you. And slowly, slowly, the wound can be healed, and the relationship can be reestablished, and you feel happy with that person. And if you can practice that with the people around you, in your family, so you can extend the relationship with other people. So by daily the practice, you can understand the interbeing, you can understand the non-self, impermanence, and also other deep teaching. And in Buddhism, if we can understand one teaching, we can understand other teaching, because they also relate each other. So at the beginning, you don't need to learn many things. You just learn non-self and put them into practice, and slowly you can understand impermanent. Or you can learn interbeing and you put it into practice. Slowly, slowly you can understand the non-self and other teaching. So the key point is to bring them to put into the practice. And wherever you are, you can remind yourself everything is impermanent, or everything is interbeing, or everything is non-self. So reminding yourself is help you to go back to yourself and to take care whatever comes up in your mind. Either joy, happiness, anger, irritation, depression. So you always go back to take care of yourself. And you see that you don't do it alone, but you do it for your parents, for your grandparents, and for your ancestors, because you know that you contain all of them. You contain your ancestors, your parents, and yourself. And also when you have the shortcoming or mistake, you also see that it is not your own mistake. It is not your own shortcoming, not all your habit energy. But maybe it is a habit energy from your parents, your grandparents, and you practice for all of them. So you don't do alone. You don't do with your family. And also with the society, because sometimes you have that shortcoming because the society also. So you don't have the responsibility by yourself only, but together collective energy create that kind of habit energy. So I wish you practice joyfully and happily and see the relationship between you and people around you. Thank you.
My question is on reincarnation. So I'm interested in how long between lives? Do we choose our parents? Do we choose our qualities, our talents, or are they from previous lifetimes? And one more is, are we connected to sort of the same group of people, reincarnation after reincarnation? Those are my questions. Thank you.
So just to restate the question. So the question is about reincarnation. Do we choose our parents and so forth, our society and, parents' qualities and so forth? And also the other question is, do we also choose the group of people in which we reincarnate?
Do we just continue with the same?
Do we continue with the same group as before? And how long in between the time of death, you mean, and being reincarnated?
Dear respected Thai, dear beloved community, dear friend, first of all, I would like to share the common understanding about reincarnation. And I also would like to share the perspective from Plum village as I understood. Yeah. So the common traditional way of understanding reincarnation is that we have a soul, a separate self entity, and we live, we born with it, we live our life, we die, and we continue. And our action through body, speech, and mind, we bring along us, and the result, the fruit of our actions, we carry with us. So it can be so-called bad karma or good karma. Another aspect of common way of understanding is after our death, then we wait for 49 days and then we get reborn. So in a tradition we do 49 days ceremony in order to wish that person to be reborn in a better state. And relating to your question, are we reborn together with a group of people? Yeah, that is also part of the traditional way. For example, we are relating to our parents, our family, because we have a certain affinity, and so we reborn together. Not together, but we get reborn, and then we are linked to certain collective consciousness. But there is still the idea of a separate self as we get reborn. Though we are connected to our parents or our nation and so on. That is the common traditional way of understanding reincarnation. What I have understood from Plum village teaching, from Thai teaching is, and this has the origin in the Buddha teaching, is that birth and death is happening in the same moment, instantly. So we don't have to wait in order to get reborn. And this teaching has to do with continuity. Dị thục sát na. It means every phenomena is ripening, is changing in every moment, instantly. That is one of the Dharma, Plum Village Dharma seal. So it means because there is changing, there is ripening in every moment, it means we are receiving input in every moment. That means we don't have a separate self entity. We interact. So in terms of time, then there is changing, there is ripening in every moment. In terms of space, we interconnecting it with all that is. Like Sister Hien just said, looking at this flower, looking at us. Every moment there is new air, in breath, and then exchanging out breath. So we are reborn, we reincarnate in every moment. And through the three actions, body, speech, and our mind, our thinking, we are interacting in every moment. In Plum Village, we use the term manifestation. So, if we think being born, like a cloud on a blue sky day, and then a cloud is being born together with non-cloud element. Yeah? With all that is, the vapor, Mother Earth, the sun, and so on. So us being born at that moment of our birth, we are born together with all that is. Our parents, our people, and also globally, people and all beings, and with the cosmos. And seeing that light, we can say we manifest from all that is. But be also careful when we say we manifest after our death. As a child, be very careful not to be caught in the idea of separate self-entity. After our death, then we need to wait for 49 days or maybe longer according to conditions. Then we manifest as a child. But be very careful not to be caught in the idea, oh, we have done our best and now the fruit of the three actions, body, speech, and our thinking will help us to manifest in a better state as a separate self-entity. So therefore I used the term inter-manifestation. So manifestation, but together with all that is. Our own actions, but also collective, globally, all that is. So we flow together again as a river, not as a separate self, drop of water, as manifestation. So be very careful about that. Yeah. In terms of reincarnation, we may have a certain aspiration to help the world, and after our death, then our aspiration is already linked to the collective aspiration, and we manifest together, not as a separate self entity. And to mention another Plum Village Dharma seal relating to reincarnation, that is the thời để dung thông, the 3 times, thời is time, the 3 times they inter-are. That is, this is just one of the wonderful practice of Plum Village. So the past, the present, and the future, they inter-are. They cannot be separate. Yeah. So therefore, what is happening, like when we look at our body at this moment, we can see our ancestors. We can see all that is evolution in our body. Yeah. And what we are living with our life, that continue the present and also the past. Our ancestor, all that is. We flow together into the future. And the future is actually already there in the present moment. We are making the future by living our present. We are showing the seed of the future in the present moment. And because the insight, because of the insight of the 3 times inter-are, then we can dwell in the present moment, and this present moment is made of that insight of interbeing between the 3 times. It's made of the energy of mindfulness, concentration, insight. So on the level of historical dimension, there is coming, going, there is the past, the present, and the future. But on the ultimate dimension, which is what we are doing here, is dwelling happily in the present moment with the energy of mindfulness, concentration, and insight. Then we don't have to go anywhere. I have arrived, I'm home. In the here, in the now, I'm solid, I'm free. In the ultimate, I dwell. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. Happiness is here and now. And that is the perspective of Plum Village practice, and what that is has the origin in the Buddha teaching. The Buddha has taught us the teaching, dwelling happily in the present moment with that insight. So in Buddhism, there are many schools, many perspectives, and also many ways, skillful ways to help people. There is what we call Buddhism based on faith. There is Buddhism based on insight. There is Buddhism for common people. And there is deeper Buddhism for those who have the conditions to understand. And here in Plum Village, we embrace all kinds of schools of Buddhism, all kinds of perspective. But Thai also would like to encourage us to go into a deeper one, which what I just said. This is how I understood, and maybe our brother and sister can share and can add.
Dear brothers, dear sisters, dear friends, I have an aspiration to build a home. And so what aspects of your own Sangha would you recommend we as lay people bring back to facilitate in the building of a Buddha field? Thank you.
So dear friends, so our friend has the aspiration to build a home, and he'd like to know what he can take from Plum Village, how he can benefit to build a Buddha field there, back in as a lay family, or just alone?
Friends.
With friends, okay, together with friends. So, dear Thai, dear Sangha, so I'm happy to share on this topic. So our teacher continues the vision of Martin Luther King Jr. to build a beloved community, and we realize that through Sangha is a beloved community. So by practicing brotherhood and sisterhood, we taking care of our relationships. We have this Plum Village. Early on, it was only a few small farm buildings, and our teacher, Sister Shang Kong, and some few refugees from Vietnam, and through the energy of mindful living, in the way of eating, in the way of walking, in the way of the three actions that my brother shared about, the way of speaking, thinking, and so forth. Slowly, more people came. They felt somehow there was an energy here that they could benefit from, that could bring transformation into their lives. And now we have what is happening here every day. And for the first 10 years, Thai was the only monk. Almost 10 years, maybe 7 years, 8 years. And so it was primarily a lay community. And so I think that's a good place to start, is to look into how Plum Village grew up, what kind of conditions were there. I was not there at that time. I was still... when Plum Village started, I was in elementary school. And I didn't know about this beautiful place. But what I've heard is that it was not always easy. We are in wine country, for example, and so it was not easy for Thai to convince people not to drink wine. It's maybe a bit shocking to hear that, but and also smoking and things like that. So Thai had to find a balance between being too strict and possibly damaging the relationship, and being maybe too easygoing, and then the core of the mindfulness practice is lost. So he always tried to find a middle way, not going to extremes. And in my own practice, I see if I hold too tightly to, like, this is a Plum Village practice, these are the mindfulness trainings, and then I can forget the human relationship, and I lose my patience with that person, and I just see the rule. So it's not enough to have a set of rules to follow. Although having a common aspiration, I feel, is the core of any kind of Buddha field, any kind of community that we build. We need to be able to state what our common aspiration is. I've lived in a number of communities before I came to Plum Village, experimental communities, and I learned, I can say the hard way, that if we don't state clearly what our aspiration is as a community, we might have very different visions for that community. And that's fine, but when we start acting on that vision, and we find that they don't come together, they don't work in harmony, then again we cut the relationship. We create barriers. Because you have your vision and I have my vision, and our vision maybe is going in a different direction. And then even though we might, if we let go of our idea, we might get along well, but because we are so enamored of our own vision, we actually hurt each other. And that's something that I also try to practice with on a daily basis. And that's the training I got in Plum Village. I oftentimes I fall down, but I come back and I say, okay, I learn from that. When I get caught in my vision of how I see the community and how I feel we should grow, and then that is in conflict with what I perceive in my brother's vision, and so then I can make the mistake of prioritizing the vision instead of trying to look for a common ground and adjusting my view in order to incorporate my brother's view. So a lot of it has to do with right view and letting go of our idea that we cherish so deeply. So I think Thai had a lot of patience. Thai was not so happy about the fact that there were maybe wine bottles hidden in places in the early days in Plum Village. In the very early days, but he also had to practice patience and have compassion and try to develop his understanding and see that building a community, on the one hand, it is one of the greatest things we can do as a human being. In fact, I cannot think of a greater thing than we can do is building a true Buddha field, a true community. But it's also very difficult. It's one of the most difficult things because it means we have to let go of even those things that we feel are so sacred sometimes in our heart. Not because we lose our integrity, but because we see that in order to understand that person and understand what the aspiration is, we need to not create a wall around our vision and not allow anyone to climb over that wall. So that is why, coming back to my sister's sharing about the depth in the profundity of the daily practice. Because when I let go of my ideas, when I let go of all my concepts in order to understand my brother, what I come back to is the solidity of my sitting, my walking, my breathing. Because I'm breathing in every moment, and if I can come back to the breath, let go of all my ideas, I notice that I'm still alive, that I still have a body. And although I might have thought that idea was more fundamental than my breathing or my living, in fact, I see that I can actually let go of that idea and still breathe and still walk. And then there's actually space for understanding to happen. And see, how can I allow that person's aspiration also to become part of my aspiration? And when you open the door like that, then you see that the other person also transforms. It might not be immediately evident, but if you look deeply, that's what I see. That's something I practice with my father sometimes. Because when I was young, I wanted to change my father. And it was always from the foundation of my ideas. And so I would argue for a long time and get angry and feel like I don't want to talk to my father. And but I learned that if I just live my life in a way that brings me joy, brings me happiness, that I have real freedom, real in a real community, that slowly my father becomes curious. What's going on? What's going on there? And if you do that in the long run, it's very compelling for people. It goes beyond just ideas, but it becomes incarnated in your daily life. And I feel that is how Thai built this community. He practiced letting go of his ideas, but being solid in his daily practice. And so even if no one shows up for sitting meditation, Thai will go and sit in the meditation hall. Even if it takes many days, and then slowly, maybe another person and another person comes. And if people are not happy to practice the first mindfulness training, or the fifth mindfulness training, or the third mindfulness training, then, for example, on not killing, eating in a way that doesn't cause harm, or not consuming in a way that we waste the resources of the earth or intoxicate ourselves, then at least Thai in his own practice practices that very correctly, but also has patience and understanding for others, not judging, not using our practice to judge others or compare ourselves, but rather just to use it as a nourishment for our daily life, to nourish our joy and freedom. And if we really realize that, people will come along. So as I shared the other day about growing the Buddha field in our heart first. It should not be a place that we retreat to and use to judge others, but rather a place that we keep growing and growing with patience and understanding. And slowly it affects that other person. And if you continue, then people become curious. They want to come and live in that place. So that is for me the core of building a real space for freedom and happiness in our home. It comes with letting go of our ideas. And then from time to time, taking refuge in the big Sangha. As a community, we have started many satellite communities around the world, and we are quite accustomed to the growing pains of building a new monastic community. And so it doesn't happen overnight. And so from time to time, those brothers and sisters in those communities, they need to come back and take a bath in the root. And then they can, maybe after a few years, they can go back out to the satellite center. And now those centers become more and more solid, and then they are able to provide a place of refuge for other people. And so it grows like that. So don't look at it as like my home and I have to do it all by myself. You also have the Sangha here. And when things get to be too much, you can come back and take a bath in the root. Maybe for a week or a month or 2 months. So you need to build into your way of living time to nourish your own happiness. Because it's challenging. If you are in the center there and everyone's asking you, sometimes it feels a little bit powerful, but actually in the long run, if you have no one to take refuge in, you need to have brothers and sisters that you can share your deepest hurt or your deepest pain with, and feel like you can trust them. And that's not always possible. Sometimes people come and go. And so feel that the Plum Village can be a kind of source of understanding and solidity for that Buddha field. I hope that's a start. There are many things about building a community, so I think we can spend the whole time sharing about it, but I think that's already enough to start. Yeah.
So dear respected Tay, dear brothers and sisters, I'm quite nervous. So I was wondering if you can share some skillful ways to create mutual understanding and even ask friends for support without putting pressure on the other person or even create more suffering. Because I sometimes find myself in situations in which, even though beforehand I would make sure I have enough space and the other one has enough space, there are, that I would tap into something that would create suffering for the other person.
So dear Thai, dear Sangha, so how do we create mutual understanding and ask for support from a friend without putting pressure on them? And in doing so, maybe create more suffering.
Dear Thai, dear brothers, sisters, and dear friends, I think that we have to go through misunderstanding in order that we can understand each other. And we have to offer ourselves and other people time and space. Is very important. And in the practice, everything is based on ourselves. If we can understand ourselves, then we can understand other people. If we don't understand ourselves, then we cannot understand other people. So we have to go back to ourselves to take care of ourselves in order that we can understand ourselves. And when we understand ourselves, it's easy for us to understand other people. And from that base, when we ask for hope, we also open for everything happen. For example, sometimes we ask for hope, but we don't hear, or we don't receive, or we don't feel the people will help us. And at that moment, we have to understand why. But we are not so hurry to judge people why they don't help me, why they don't support me, because there may be many conditions happen that we don't understand yet. We don't know yet. And also we can offer that person space and time. Maybe they are doing something to help us, but because we don't see by our eyes, so we thought that they don't do anything yet to help us. So when we need some help, for example, so we should ask, but we also offer that person space and time to find way to help us, because sometimes they cannot find the solution right away and they need time. So by that way, we don't put the pressure on that person. And by that way, it's also easy for us to ask for help. Because if we don't put pressure on that person, on other people, then we feel free also. We don't feel scaring. Because sometimes we are afraid that we put pressure on that person, so it is why we don't want to share our suffering and our difficulty. But in fact that we don't, when we ask for help, we don't put pressure on that person. So it is the same when someone asks you for help. So you also try to help, but you don't want to put the pressure on you. And sometimes you don't answer them right away because there are some aspects that you need time and you need support from other people in order that you can support that person the best. So by that way, you can nourish our mature understanding, but without put the pressure on other people. And we also understand that there are many conditions happen for certain thing happen, for that situation happen. And sometimes it's not easy to understand right away. And sometimes we misunderstood by the other. And we feel hurt. And we also create the suffering on other people. But with the practice, we can be very patient. Offer ourselves time to understand. And when we understand one person, we have to understand the background of that person, how that person grew up. If we don't understand the background, maybe we don't understand that person. We think that we understand that person, but in fact that we don't understand. We just base on our judgment, on our thinking. And also, it is why sometimes we share our suffering, we also share our background for the people to understand ourselves. Because if you only share the situation, maybe the people don't understand you deeply. And when they don't understand you deeply, maybe they cannot help you correctly. So you have to share. And we know that everyone has their limit. We also have the limit, and we understand other people also have their limit. And when we understand that, we don't demand too much from that person. So whatever happens, we also welcome, we also accept it. And when we have the capacity to accept, we can understand more. Because we are open for everything happen as they are, but without our expectation, without our judgment. So by that way, we can understand other people. We can understand the situation, and we are ready to ask for help, but without put the pressure on that person. Sometimes we are hurry, and we have tendency for the situation resolved right away. And because we don't have time, so it is why we put pressure on ourselves. So please offer us time and offer other people time. When we ask for help, we know that the situation can be resolved, can be solved. So don't worry. And we know that it will be okay, it will be better. So by that way we are free. Thank you.
So dear friends, we have a few written questions, so maybe we'll take one first after the sound of the bell. There's a question. Dear sisters, dear brothers, dear friends, I have heard of other Buddhist traditions in which monks are seen as superior to nuns. And there are quite a lot of differences in how they practice. I am therefore interested in how this is held in the Plum village tradition. Are there any differences in nuns and monks or in their practice, and if so, what are these differences based on?
The Thai Sangha, just for playing again, I would like to ask my sister, do you feel that we are better than you, superior? So we can start from that perspective, and there's a dialogue, and then you feel how it is in Plum Village. Yes, my dear, I obey you. Sister Nghiem asked us to start as brothers because this had to do with the brother side. Do we feel superior?
I don't know how this rebounded back. Well, I just start and then I leave for my sisters. So, so I feel that coming to the Plum Village community, we see each other as human beings who are who carry within ourselves our ancestors and their prejudices, their fears, and that includes a lot of discrimination and violence based on ideas about man and the woman, and also in the Buddhist tradition, there are currents like that from our ancestral teachers. I think most of them did their best to try to practice non-duality and non-discrimination, but they also are products of the collective consciousness of the society and the conditions of how maybe the people in their village see what is the role of the man, what is the role of the woman. And so we have the ideal of wanting to become free from the complex of superiority, inferiority, and even the complex of equality, because it can create a lot of suffering as well if we compare ourselves with the other person. But we know that those ancestors and those, both from our blood ancestors and our spiritual ancestors are within us. And so So in my personal practice, I have to look in my heart every day and see and learn also ways of seeing how things that maybe I take for granted or that are just kind of there as I continue on my spiritual path are also a kind of privilege that is not just so-called natural, but it's coming from that stream, that ancestral stream in the tradition. And personally, I find that fighting against it, struggling against it, doesn't seem to work very well. Because most things, and I find when I struggle against it, like if I struggle against the patriarchy, I feel I might become in danger of becoming the patriarchy. And because I see that in many aspects of my practice, whenever I create a duality, then if I fight against it, I always run the danger of becoming that very thing that I fight against. And so I don't think there's a simple, I don't see it as something you just answer like that. I need to see that current and see how I am within me is also that continuation of violence and discrimination. And be willing to look at it honestly, embrace it, and then also I need to listen to my sisters when there are things that I don't see, because for me, one of the most important parts of living in community is that I notice when I practice by myself, it could be quite easy to have a solo retreat and have my thermos and my sitting mat, and everything is controlled and very simple, and I don't have to interact with people, and then I can feel quite happy. But I don't have my brothers and sisters to take the blinders off of my own habit energies. And so although it's challenging, but it's very rewarding to be able to live as we do in Plum Village as brothers and sisters and work together on sometimes very complex projects. And I see that many times I've created suffering because of things that that I didn't recognize in my own way of continuing those that pattern of discrimination and violence. And so I'm very grateful that I have my sisters there to remind me to look into that energy, although I don't maybe appear grateful in the moment, but afterwards when I reflect, I'm very, very grateful when I have time to look into it and try to do my best to transform it, embrace it, and see what kind of fear is there, what kind of maybe paranoia or maybe desire that is also motivating that stream of that collective stream of violence and discrimination across the gender. So I think I cannot say yes and no. I think to this question as to whether there are differences, but I feel that it comes down to recognizing it both on an individual level and on a collective level, and calling those patterns of discrimination and violence by their true name, so that we can, each of us, look into our own practice and see how we are perpetuating this kind of situation of fear and anger and sadness. So that's maybe a start. So I don't know if it's that's just from my limited perspective. It's somebody who identifies as a male and is a monk. Yeah. Thank you for listening.
Dear respected Thai, dear Sangha, all monastics, as part of our kind of precept body, our monastic Vinaya, we cherish the fact that we've been born human. we've been born human, and as a human, we can hear the Dharma, we can put the Dharma into practice, and we can heal and transform, and we can help relieve suffering in the world. And so as humans, all our blood is red, all our tears are salty. No matter what particular physical expression our human nature takes. And sitting here and reflecting on the gendering of our Sangha, I see also that, in fact, I think our community, we're also marked by many kinds of diversity. We have ethnic and cultural diversity. We have diversity of backgrounds. So some of us come from deep in the countryside and very simple backgrounds. Others of us were born in cities. Some of us entered the spiritual path early. Some of us entered the spiritual path later. And then we're not even mentioning diversities of personality, character, and interest. So I think there are many diversities in our community, and gender is just one of them. And a very interesting phenomena is that gender expresses itself in different cultures differently. So we discover, even living within a women's community, as I do here in Lower Hamlet, and the majority of our guest retreatants are also female identified, and we see there's a huge spectrum of diversity, how we express that. I love the fact that at the time of the Buddha there were bhikshunis, fully ordained nuns, who became arahats. It means they touched full enlightenment. So the Dharma, the teachings and the practices enabled these women 2,500 years ago to break through all their afflictions, their anger, their grief, their despair, their sense of a separate self, their fears and attachment, and to really become women of peace, of compassion, of wisdom. And they are the matriarchs in Buddhism, and we follow in their footsteps as best we can. In the Plum Village tradition, thanks to our teacher, we always try to have balance. So you see in the formal lunch the other day, the nuns and monks, we walk alongside each other, which is quite radical in the Buddhist world. And whenever we teach as a group, we always try to balance the gender also. So here you see 2 monks and 2 nuns. And personally, I appreciate the fact that here in the Lower Hamlet, we are 3 kilometers from the brothers. So that is 3 kilometers of freedom, but also it can be 3 kilometers which is close enough to ask for help. So our bodies sometimes are not so strong, and we need the monks' help cutting trees or helping construct things. And then sometimes when the brothers need our help, it's also close enough to help them. But we have I think we have a kind of independence as sisters. So each hamlet is kind of sovereign. And so this is a very special and rare experience for a women's community to be sovereign. We establish our own rules. Even our Vinaya has been developed, our monastic code has been developed by elder nuns over many centuries, many generations. And then here in Plum Village, we get to establish how we would like to run our hamlet together. I don't know how many all-female businesses there are in the world. I know there's a number of female kind of cooperatives and things. And that naturally, we introduce certain measures, practices, insights to help us live in harmony, to flourish together, and to walk in the footsteps of the enlightened nuns of the Buddha's time. But for me personally, I think the most meaningful thing that we do as the women's community in the Plum Village tradition is we have female monastics and female lay friends from many different cultures and backgrounds, and I think that diversity coming together as human practitioners to touch peace and freedom and joy together, that is very powerful. And to have such a diversity of nationalities and backgrounds is a very beautiful, pioneering kind of practice for a world and a planet that is getting smaller. And here we have different cultures coming to live together in harmony and in freedom from the monks. But we do come together and we do a lot together, as you can see. We do. There are times when the monk sangha and the nun sangha teach together, conduct ceremonies together, take refuge in one another, and I think as the sisters, we feel so grateful for the presence of the monks. Many of us, we are not how do you say, rejecting. Not rejecting men in our life, even becoming celibate nuns. But we take refuge in the brothers. We turn to the brothers for guidance, for insight, for their wisdom and experience, for their help, for their support. And that also is a very wonderful practice of interdependence between the sister sangha and the brothers sangha. Thai created a community where we live as a family. It's really, and I like the words brother and sister, and that is how we address each other. So we turn to our brothers like there are brothers in our own family, like there are uncles, spiritual fathers. And that is a great support and solace for us also to make progress on our path. And to always have the fresh perspective, the diverse perspective also of other genders. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. It's an opportunity for us to share in order that you can understand more in our community. You know, this altar is offered by brothers. It's very beautiful, right? Yeah, it is made by hands. So it's very beautiful. And the other side, no. Okay. And also that the stupa, one pillar temple. Yeah, it is also offered by brother. Also handmade. It's very beautiful. And we want to have the altar, patriarch altar, maybe the same with the Buddha altar, but we cannot do it. So the sister try to do the similar with, but with our capacity, we do like that. And brothers, they promise to offer us one, maybe similar to this altar. So maybe in the future we have this. So in this area, the brother, they are very talented, and they offer us by this thing. And as Sister Nghiem shared, we help each other. And almost every year we had the community work at least once. And the brothers always ask us to clean up the the storage every corner. And after the day of community, the brothers' hamlet become more bright, more beautiful. So there are many different things, but we don't compare, we don't feel that the brother is better than the sisters or the sisters better than brothers, because we interact and we treasure each other by the different quality. So it is the same in the practice. So we support each other. And also in the sisters, among the sisters, there are some different talented, different skillful means. But we don't discriminate. We don't say that you are better than me or you worse than me. So we see that every task are as important as other. For example, we are here are as important as the sister who are cooking today. So we support each other. So it is the same between the brothers and sisters. Is that right? Yeah, we practice on that spirit. Thank you very much.
Bonjour à tous. Oui, je vais parler en français, je ne sais pas si on peut traduire. Dans un chemin spirituel, on est tous le novice de quelqu'un, le maître de quelqu'un, dans l'humilité. Par exemple, pour reprendre des termes, il y a un Bouddha en chaque personne, on est tous traversés par la même énergie, mais il me semble qu'il y a une hiérarchie monastique, qu'on peut différencier les novices, par exemple. Je ne sais pas comment je peux poser ma question autrement. Oui, déjà, est-ce qu'il y en a un? Est-ce qu'il y a un lien hiérarchique dans une prise de décision, par exemple? Est-ce que les novices ont les mêmes droits que des gens qui sont là depuis plus longtemps? J'ai cru entendre tout à l'heure qu'il y a des gens qui sont sur un chemin spirituel depuis plus ou moins longtemps, mais qui peuvent l'avoir étant plus jeunes ou pas. Donc voilà, comment vous voyez cette question-là?
Thank you for your question. So the question is that we are all on a kind of spiritual path, and on that path we play the role of both teacher and student. Sometimes we are one, sometimes we are the other. And our friend also observes that in our community there are those playing more the role of students and those playing more the role of teachers. And he wonders what is the role of like hierarchy in the Sangha, because he's starting to understand that some are more senior than others. We would like to invite Thai Phap to answer this question.
The Thai Sangha, I try to understand your question, your motivation in the question. One time, being a Thai attendant, walking in the forest in America during a retreat tour, Thai asked me to go in front of Thai. And as Thai's attendant, very young, maybe I was still a novice, I was very scared. Because as a student of Thai, you never dare to walk in front of Thai. You never dare to walk beside, next to Thai. You walk behind Thai. And at that time, I didn't dare to walk in front of Thai, though Thai encouraged me, invited me, walk in front of me. And so Thai insisted me to do that, and I start to walk in front of Thai. Because there is a practice of obeying in the student and teacher relationship as well. So walking in front of Thai, I felt Thai was like sending his love and his trust, his insight. You are me. You come to know me. So walk with me and for me. And yeah, that energy I still can see it in many brothers and sisters manifesting Thai, though Thai is not in Plum village. So it's wonderful to see that interconnectedness, non-separation between a student, a teacher, a younger one, an elder one, a monastic or lay friends. It would be wonderful to touch that insight in order to nourish ourselves and nourish our non-self elements. And then we grow on the path. So this is not hierarchy. Yeah, this is different. This is family, spiritual family. And I see it's 11:15, so maybe I should stop here. I don't know. Our brother and sister would like to add or not.
Thank you, dear friends, for your questions. And this is an invitation for us all to look deeply in our heart and see that those of us sitting here, we are also on the path, and we are practicing, and we do it together. So thank you for supporting us and sharing our practice, and we continue our time together with walking meditation, enjoying our step, enjoying our breath. So we'll finish with 3 sounds of the bell.